We mostly use Pro Tools as an audio editor and mixer, but I want to talk about some of the MIDI capabilities that are in here, just so you're aware of them and you can use them, and you kind of need to use them in your project. So I'm going to talk about three different ways. I'm going to talk about drawing notes and ways you can do it that way. I'm going to talk about importing MIDI files, and I'm going to talk about importing loops. Let's get started. You can see I have some instrument tracks here with a lot of different instruments that you can play with. The first one I'm going to do is I'm going to just draw some notes. So I grabbed the studio drums for this structure. So it's under instruments, and then you can grab the drums here. There's lots of different drum sounds you can use. I just grabbed studio drums, and what's cool about that, I'll show you that you can add more sounds here, so you could back that up with, for instance, have studio drums and electronic drums. So I'll show you how to do that. So we've got a couple different ways we can view the lane here, and one of them is notes. So we have our magnifier, trim, select, grabber, speaker, and pencil tool. So I'm going to put in pencil tool. I'm going to be in grid mode, and I know that the loops that I'm importing are going to be at 120 beats per minute. So I brought up the transport, and it defaults to 120 beats per minute, so I don't need to do anything with that. When I'm looking at grid, I want to pay attention, make sure that my clock is in bars and beats mode, because then my grid then will correspond to all that. And I can change the resolution of my grid up here. So right now I'm in 16th notes. So if I want to do something real basic, I could do in quarter notes, and you'll see a lot of the grid lines disappear, and I can go to something super detailed. I don't want to do that. Let's just do 8th notes. And I'm on this drum track, and I've got studio drums. So I'm just going to grab the pencil tool, freehand here, and grab a note. Now it didn't make any sound because the drums are only in a certain part. So if I move, there's my kick drum. So I could grab that. Now I could, things like I can highlight that, copy, and paste. You can see now there's another note. If I stay in the pencil tool, I could draw more notes. I'm going to close the transport. I don't need that anymore. So I could add that. And I'm looking between bar 13 and 14. If I want to hear what that sounds like, I can highlight that. Now if I zoom in a little bit using command brackets, and you'll see here, if I hold different modifiers, I can move this one around. Notice they're all highlighted. So if I just highlight, whoops, one of them. So the snare is going to go here. And I'm going to grab one here. Holding Option, I can delete some of those. And I'm going to draw here. Wrong note. Let's hear what this sounds like. I have no idea. Trying to drum the hi-hat. That's the hi-hat. So I want that one to go away. Option. If I want to hear what that sounds like, I'm highlighting that. Okay, so I'm still getting that error. So here's what I'm going to show you what you do. You go up to Playback Engine, and I'm going to increase the hardware buffer size. So I'm going to kick it up a notch and see what happens. You can see that I can draw this loop. And if I go now to clips, you'll see that all has become a clip. So I can highlight this. And you notice that I can then still do processing that. So I added a compressor after this. And if I wanted to add reverb, but I didn't want to add the kick drum, I could make two loops and then move the kick drums just to its own loop. But right now I've got all that running on one side. Something else you might do is something like trigger loops off the structure free. So there's a lot of different loops in here. And you can see here all these different loops. So how do you do that? Well, in this case, these loops then just are triggered on one particular note. So if I go to the pencil, you'll see here, it's just one note dragged. So if I deleted that and did like, the loop would never happen because it's just triggering the first note of the loop as opposed to having the loop continue on. So if you can see here, and then that's now moving the loop and having the loop entire loop. You can change its pitch. Now I'll show you another trick. So with MIDI, if I double click this, it opens up the MIDI editor. Right here, make sure that is lit, because that is your grid lines. Without that, the grid lines disappear. So sometimes it's easier to do things in here. And down here are different volumes. So if I move this around, you can see those are all highlighted. So I'm going to use Command Z. And then if I move that over here, oh, I got that muted. I was like, why don't I hear it? So now that's another window. If I don't want that, I can just delete that, and I'll close that window. So let's go back in here. If I hold Control and add new patch, I'm just going to add an empty patch. Now notice this is playing an A1, so I'm going to change this to A1, and I'm going to grab a 90s electronic kit. So now if I mute this, there's that kit, and then same loop. Now I can have them both going. So that's something that may be cool with MIDI, and that's just drawing MIDI in Pro Tools.